everybody, and welcome to this second part in the Lotus Elise SuperSport series on this freezing cold day in January 2025. Happy New Year to all of you. In this series, we're looking at how Lotus Elise specialist Analogue Automotive set out to make the already outstanding Elise S1 even better. In the first part in the series, I spoke with Steffen Dobke, who told us about his own background, about his company, Analogue Automotive, and introduced us to the Lotus Elise SuperSport. In this second episode, the project actually gets underway, and we take a close look at the actual donor car selected for the project. Once again, for this episode, I'm behind the camera. From episode 3, which is already filmed, make sure you hit subscribe and notifications to make sure you see it. I'll be in front of the camera chatting with Steffen. But it's way too cold now for a very long introduction, so let's get over to Fernhurst and meet with Steffen again.
So there'll be a couple of factors in that. Obviously, they're manufactured from late 96 through to 2000, depending on their registration. Depends where the client is taking the car foremost. So if it needs to conform with a 25-year-old, we'll get as early as possible. So typically a 97, 98 at the moment. Obviously, as time goes on, that becomes less of an issue. UK car, we've got a slightly broader spectrum, so we could go for a later car. So for instance, this car here, for a UK client, we went for a 99 car, which has got the later orange glue. Obviously in the UK, there's no import issues, so we could just pick a car based on its condition and what the client wanted out of it, rather than having to be take into account any age and import export. Yeah. And with reference to the different glue colours, it's a bonding agent. So the original chassis were made in Denmark, and they used a green bonding agent to bond the aluminium structures together. And then as soon as production moved over to the UK, to Hethel Lotus factory, they used essentially a different colour bonding agent, which was orange, and that was carried on all the way through the sort of the later S2s, sort of 98, 99, all the way into S2s, S3s, Exesias, etc. So the earlier cars were probably rarer. They're the lighter cars, and they have a green glue. I typically use those for if a customer wants a particularly lightweight car, because the chassis is a little lighter. They have some unique features, like the green glue cars usually early on came with a metal matrix aluminium disc, which are quite rare, and again quite light. But again, it depends on what the customer wants. I said it's a bespoke product, so lots of factors come into it. There's no one that's better than the other. It's just different for different projects. If I'm inspecting or buying a car, either for our own stock, for myself, or for a client, it's condition is more important than mileage. Mileage is usually a good indicator, but it doesn't tell the whole story. I've seen over the years a really low, for example, 3,000 mile car that had been essentially left in a very damp garage and had a huge amount of corrosion on it. And likewise, I've purchased cars that have 100,000 miles and the actual chassis comes up like new. So. Yeah, it doesn't really give a true reflection of, if it's a 10,000 mile car, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be immaculate. Any car can have some crash damage as well, so you need to factor that in. But I very much inspect a car on its chassis primarily, because that's something we can't, if there's any major damage, you can't do anything about that. So condition, I would say, is much more important than mileage, although mileage is a good indicator if you're going out and purchasing a car. You have to look through some of the other modifications or some of the personal touches customers put on their car. It's very much I'm buying essentially a chassis and the bodywork. So if it hasn't got any heavy osmosis, which is where the paint can bubble up, that's one thing we try and avoid, because that's very hard to fix. If sometimes it's even impossible. And crash damage, we just walk away from anything that's had crash damage or any major issues on that front. So yeah, I don't peg ourselves into just having for example, 50,000 mile car or whatever. Mileage is, like I said, good indicator, but can be irrelevant. So very much on condition, which is why I need to inspect it, and very rarely buy cars without seeing them. a little bit of a how long's a piece of string question again. Prices are increasing, so what I would pay for a car last year and what we might pay for a car next year is going to be two different numbers, I should think. They seem to be on an upward trend. Typically, we budget about 20k for a good, decent car, which will be a nice car to start with. But then if you want a really exemplary product at the end, I need to start with as nice a car as possible. Sometimes we get lucky and we'll find a really nice, clean, albeit higher mileage car, and we'll pay less than that. And sometimes for the right one, the right model, sometimes customers have specific wants and requests, then we might pay a little bit more. So it's quite a broad spectrum, but as a baseline, I say at the moment, currently in sort of 2024, sort of just under or over 20k will get you a nice car. That will still need work. I mean, you could use it if you wanted, just have it as a nice Elise, but you will have some of the sort of 25-year-old problems that a 25-year-old car comes with. But as a base, that's what we sort of budget for. Well, that's tricky nowadays to start with. If you do, then they'll probably have some sort of crash damage, category DS, whatever it might be, or they'll be heavily modified, or it's quite a rarity to find them at that price now. They are available. We do sort of sniff them out every now and again. You're probably better off spending a little bit more because it'll make the project go simpler. There'll be less stuff to either repair. A cheaper car's probably had cheaper for a reason, so it's probably had a bit of a life. Having said that, I'm open to starting whatever, but we want to lay our eyes on it first. You can do, yeah, can do. I mean, obviously we're stripping everything back to the spare chassis anyway, but if a car's had a slightly harder life, shall we say, and the aluminium chassis, which is anodized, is heavily corroded on the floors or heavily scratched, some of that we can repair and cosmetically make look better. Some of the exposed aluminium, if that is, has dents or scratches in it, then there's not much we can do about that. So we try and start with a cleaner car as possible. It makes the project go quicker. It probably in the long run saves hours, which is, will save the customer money. So we're not fixed and rigid on that. We'll have a look at whatever cars. Typically, I try and source a car, have it pre-inspected, if you like. And we're in the stage now where we're also buying cars and stripping them down. So a portion of the work's already done, and that makes us turn around a little quicker as well. Yeah, so this is for a UK client. So it is a 99 registration car with the orange glue. Specification-wise, the customer asked us to source a car. We already had in mind what colour choice he was going to go for. So we went, it's a titanium car. It was going to go a version of grey anyway, so it probably makes more sense to start with a similar colourway. We could start with a red car, but then it's a lot more work. So again, when you're choosing a car, if we have those discussions and we know which route we're going, we try and keep it within the same sort of colour palette just to make the paint work easier. It was a really nice condition car, had about 30,000 miles on it, so it was relatively low mileage. Had some nice options on it. Came with a hardtop, for example, which are quite hard to find, and the customer sort of spec'd a hardtop on it. It's one we had our eyes on, and then we're talking through with the client. We went to inspect it. Bought it from a dealer, which I don't generally do, but it was a well-respected dealer, and we got on well with them, so they knew what we were going to do with it. And it was a really nice, immaculately clean chassis. I mean, you have to look through some of the years of grime that's built up on it, but a little bit of spit on the finger test sometimes shows that the chassis is nice and clean underneath. Really hardly any corrosion. Even the wishbones, which we're going to replace, were in really nice condition. Some of those parts we can recycle as well. So there's a benefit to Elise, the community, of getting some source of parts that we take off. We don't just chuck everything in the bin. Quite a few of the bits we'll recycle. But this was, a really nice, clean, sort of ticked every box. It was reasonably priced. It was reasonably local. So sort of landed in our lap on this one.
So, as you can see, things are moving really quickly now. I'll have to do my best to keep up, and episode 3, which is all about the strip down of the donor car, will be on the channel shortly. Thanks very much for watching, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications button on to see the next episode.